Welcome to episode 107 of Gods and Heroes of Ancient Greece. My name is MyLinda Butterworth, and today we continue with the tales of Troy and the story of the Death of Achilles. In the morning, the Peleans carried the body of Antilochus, the son of their king, to the ships and buried him on the shore of Hellespont. Old Nestor curbed his anguish, and his spirit remained steadfast and calm. But Achilles found no peace. At crack of dawn, his fury over the death of his friend drove him toward the Trojans, who had already left the shelter of their walls. They, too, were eager for the fight, even though they trembled at the thought of godlike Achilles. And again, the two hosts joined in battle. The son of Peleus slew countless foes and pursued the Trojans to their very gates. There, conscious that his powers were more than human, he prepared to lift the gates from their hinges, break the bolts, and lay the city of Priam open to the Argives. But Phoebus Apollo, looking down on the plain strewn with corpses, felt anger rise within him. Like a beast of prey, intent on its quarry, he descended from Olympus, and slung over his shoulder was his quiver, jangling with deadly arrows. Thus he faced the son of Peleus. His eyes darted flame, and the earth quaked under his tread. And now he raised his voice and thundered at Achilles. "Let the Trojans be, son of Peleus! Make an end of this slaughter. Beware, lest one of the immortals destroy you!" Achilles recognized the voice of the god perfectly, but he did not recoil in fear. Ignoring the warning, he replied, "Why do you spur me on to fight with gods by always favoring the Trojans? Once before you roused me to fury by snatching Hector out of my hands. Now, I advise you to back off to the other gods, for if you do not, my spear will surely strike you, even though you are immortal." With these words, he turned from Apollo and back to the Trojans. But Phoebus, in grim resentment, shrouded himself in a cloud, fitted an arrow to his strings, and through the impenetrable mist shot the son of Peleus in his vulnerable heel. A stinging pain darted from his foot to the heart of Achilles, and he toppled over like a tower from under which men have dug the foundation. Lying on the ground, he glared angrily in all directions and shouted, "Who was it that shot that arrow at me from afar? Oh, if only he faced me in open combat, I should drag out his entrails and spill his cursed blood until his spirit fled to the underworld. Cowards always kill the brave from ambush. Let him hear that, even if he be a god, for alas, I fear it was Apollo. Thetis, my mother, once told me that I should die from the shaft of Phoebus, and I fear now that her words have come true." Thus moaning, Achilles drew the arrow from the wound which could not be healed. When he saw the black blood spurt from it, he flung the dart furiously from him. Apollo picked it up and took it back to Olympus, and a cloud hung about him as he went. When he reached the heights of heaven, he shed his garment of mist and mingled with the other gods. Hera, the friend of the Argives, noticed his presence and began to upbraid him for what he had done. "That was an evil deed," she said. "Did you not feast at the wedding of Peleus like the rest of the gods? Did you not sing and raise your cup and drink to the children he would have? But in spite of all, you have just killed his only son, and you slew him because you envied him. Foolish Apollo. How after this can you face the daughter of Nereus?" silent. He seated himself a little apart from the other gods and bowed his head. Some of the Olympians were indignant at what he had done. Others thanked him in their heart of hearts. But down on earth, the dark blood of Achilles still seethed in his mighty limbs. He burned with the lust to fight, and not a Trojan dared approach him, even though he was wounded. Once more, he leaped from the ground, brandished his spear, and rushed at his foes. He struck Orpheon, the friend of his old enemy Hector. The point pierced the left temple and went through the brain. Then he thrust his spear into the eye of Hippolytus, gored the cheek of Alcathous, and slew many more besides. Suddenly, he felt a coldness creeping through his limbs. He stood still and leaned on his lance. But the Trojans kept on fleeing before him, and his voice pursued them even after his feet could not. "Run for all you are worth," he roared. "It won't help you any. My weapons will reach you just the same, and when I am dead, the gods of vengeance will punish you." They trembled as they ran, for they thought he was still whole and sound. But now his limbs stiffened. He fell among the other dead. The earth shook, and his armor clanged about him. The first to see him down was Paris, his deadly enemy. With a shout of joy, he told the Trojans, and instantly many who had only just been trying to avoid his lance and sword gathered about him to take his armor. But Ajax circled the body, and with spear raised high, drove off all who approached. Anyone who could fight him, he dealt the death blow. Soon Ajax was no longer content with merely fending off the Trojans. He plunged into offensive action. Glaucus, the Lycian, fell at his hands, and Aeneas was wounded. Side by side with Ajax, Odysseus fought with other Achaeans, but the Trojans staunchly resisted, and Paris even dared aim his spear at Ajax himself. He, however, always on the watch, saw the attack, took a stone and hurled it with such force that it smashed the helmet of Paris and threw him to the ground. The arrows dropped out of his quiver and scattered over the ground. He was still breathing, though very quickly. His friends barely had time to lift him into the chariot drawn by Hector's horses and take him back to Troy. Now when Ajax had driven all the Trojans back to their city, he strode to the ships, and his feet trod over corpses and weapons. From the walls of Troy to the shore of Hellespont, the field was littered with bodies. Meantime, the kings had carried slain Achilles to the ships, and his people surrounded his bier, pouring out grief too great to bear. Ajax joined them, and his plaint was loudest as he mourned the fallen hero, the son of his uncle. Old Phoenix, too, broke into wails of sorrow and clasped the strong body of Achilles in his arms. He thought of the day when Peleus had put the child into his hand and trusted him with his rearing and teaching. He also recalled the hour he and his pupil had set out of Troy, and now both father and teacher were destined to survive the child. At last, Nestor, mindful of his own son, put an end to their lamentations. He reminded them to wash the corpse and give it the honors due to the dead. This was done. The body of the son of Peleus was washed with warm water and attired in the rich robes his mother Thetis had given him for this expedition. And when he lay in the house ready for the pyre, Athene looked down on him from Olympus, and her heart filled with pity for her favorite. Quickly she sprinkled on his head a few drops of ambrosion, the balm of the gods, which is said to guard the dead from disfigurement and decay. Hardly had they touched him when he looked like one alive. The anguish and rage which had distorted his features ever since Patroclus, his friend, had been slain were smoothed away. All the Argives who came to look at him were amazed when they saw him lying on the bier in all his lordly length, his face beautiful and serene as though he were sleeping and would soon awaken. The loud lament the Argives had raised at the death of the greatest among them was carried to the depths of the sea, where Thetis, his mother, lived with the other daughters of Nereus. Sorrow swelled their hearts to bursting, and they moaned so despairingly that the Hellespont echoed with their cries. By night they set out in great company. The tide parted before them, and they went ashore where the Argive fleet was beached. In their wake the sea monsters groaned and sighed in sympathy with their sorrow. They approached the corpse, and Thetis put her arms around her child, kissed him, and wept until the ground was wet with her tears. Reverently the Danai withdrew at the coming of the goddess, who had risen from the sea, and they did not return to the body until at the first pale light of dawn. Thetis and her sisters vanished in the waves. Then down from the slopes of Ida they dragged great logs and stacked them into a pyre. They laid on it the arms of all the slain, many slaughtered victims, gold and precious metals. The Argive heroes cut strands of hair from their heads, and Briseis, Achilles' favorite, sheared off one of her lovely locks as a last gift to her lord. Over the wood they poured many flasks of oil, and among the logs they placed bowls of honey, of wine fragrant as nectar, and of sweet-smelling spices. On the top they placed the corpse. Then, fully armed on foot and on horseback, they circled around the pyre. Finally it was lit, and the flames crackled and licked through the pile. At the command of Zeus, Peleus sent his swiftest winds. They blew through the stacked wood and lashed the fire so that in a very few hours the wood and the body were wholly consumed and turned to ashes. The Danai quenched the last flickering flames with wine, and there, easily recognizable from everything that had been burnt, with them lay the bones of great Achilles. Sighing, his friends collected them, laid them in a coffer of hammered gold and polished silver, and lowered it next to the remains of his friend Patroclus on the highest point of the shore. Then they heaped the burial mound. The immortal horses of the son of Peleus sensed that he was dead. They tore the thongs which tethered them, unwilling to share the toils and cares of men now that their master was gone. It was difficult to catch them and to calm their restlessness and alarm. And here is where I end my tale for today. But I'll be back with more tales, many more tales. Until then, my friends, enjoy the journey.